Hey everybody, I am Brady Briggs. Welcome to another episode of the Combat Logic. What's up, guys? I'm here today to recap UFC Vegas 57, PFL 5, and Bellator 282. We're going to start off with PFL 5. All right, starting off the card, we had Brennan Ward picking up a good win, defeating Algo Huskic. And something to be said, Brennan Ward, he's not so much of a finisher, but he's a very, very solid talent. And honestly, I think Dana White kind of dropped the ball in passing him up. After his Contender Series win. He's now 6-1 in PFL. His only defeat coming to last year's champion, Mavli Kalbalayev, or Kybalayev, I'm sorry. So, yeah, good win for him. Juan Adams picked up his second win in the PFL, I believe. Nope, it was his first one in the PFL. He has gone 5-1 since his UFC departure. It was good to see him get a second round knockout. Lance Palmer absolutely mauled Shaman Marias. And Shaman, he looked good on the feet as he usually does, but Palmer's wrestling was just too much for him. Shaman Marias had done pretty well for himself since leaving the UFC too. So he left the UFC on back-to-back losses to Sadiq Yusuf and Andre Feely. He came to PFL and got knocked out by Brennan Ward last year. Since then, he'd won 3 straight. He got a submission, a knockout, and a decision in those 3 wins. And then he follows it up with a defeat to Lance Palmer, who started off his PFL tenure with 11 straight wins, a 2-time PFL champion. Following that, he lost 3 straight, to the likes of Bubba Jenkins, who out-wrestled him, something that's never happened before. Mavli Kybalayev, again, never happened before, never been out-wrestled like that. And then Chris Wade, what Lance Palmer has always brought to the table is elite level wrestling. And, good athleticism, great strength. And yeah, to see him get out-wrestled in 3 straight fights like that was really something. And he came back and, snapped that 3-fight skid. The first time he'd ever lost back-to-back fights or, back-to-back-to-back fights, he'd never lost 2 in a row, let alone 3. It seems like when the PFL took that COVID break in 2020, it really fucked with him. That year and a half off, he just came back and he was flat. He didn't do too well. He went 0-2 last year in the PFL, and then he came back this year to go 0-1 up until Friday, where he picked up his first win in nearly 3 years. So that was good to see. Dennis Goldsoff had a really dominant performance over Murray Screen. And I was sad to see this because I like Murray Screen. He's very fun to watch fight. I thought that as soon as I saw him fight on The Ultimate Fighter, when he knocked out, that Russian dude. He went by a PM because those are his initials. I don't remember what his name was. But that knockout, he's so fluent with his striking. And I found out it's because he's a pro kickboxer. He went 1-3 in Glory. Which is less than impressive. 4-4 entirely as a professional. And his ground game is actually pretty good. He's got good submissions. He tried to wrap up a couple triangles, but Goldsoff's defense held up, and he's able to wrestle him for 3 rounds. Bubba Jenkins picked up another big win. Chris Wade, this is his second knockout with a head kick in the PFL, and he knocked out Kyle Bochniak, Kyle Bochniak is not a great fighter. He's not a technician. He's really just a durable talent that brings the fight to people. He gave Zabit Magomed all he could handle in the 3rd round of their fight, for instance. He beat Enrique Barzola. And, yeah, man, he'd never been finished before. Through 17 fights, never been finished. And Chris Wade did it in 70 seconds. A head kick followed up by some punches, and that's all she wrote. Chris Wade has really been impressing me lately. He had some hiccups early on his first couple seasons with the PFL, and then he came back last year to go 3-0 up until his final match against Mavli Kalbalayev, which he lost. But yeah, he's off to a great start in this year too, already going 2-0 thus far with wins over Lance Palmer and Kyle Bochniak. It's pretty impressive. I'm excited to see what he can do later on in the season. Klidson Abreu, he picked up a pretty dominant victory over Renan Ferreira. Renan Ferreira is the guy that knocked out Fabricio Verdum after being submitted by him. Yeah, that was a good win for Abreu. They're both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, but Abreu's Jiu-Jitsu was better, as you could tell. I would say wrestling because, you know, he took him down and remained on top for the entire fight, really. But it was really like more of a grappling-based ground attack. He used really good, effective jiu-jitsu takedown against a pretty elite grappler. And yeah, he picked up a good one. He's now 2-1 in the PFL, 2-0 this year so far. So that was good to see. Stevie Ray versus Anthony Pettis. This was so sad. Anthony Pettis started off this fight, like the first half of round one, he was on fucking point, man. Throwing all sorts of flashy shit. And just like he used to, man, he looked so good. He was landing some really hard body kicks. And Stevie Ray started to pressure him with some boxing later on in the round. And, you know, it's up in the air who you give that round to, considering, you know, it was really like the first half went to Pettis, the second half went to Stevie Ray. But the second round, more of the same happened. And Stevie Ray ends up taking Anthony's back, where Pettis, he has a body triangle, and Pettis spins into him to, you know, wind up and raise guard. And in the middle of spinning into him, he gets tapped because his back gets tweaked. So what I have to say about this isn't the first time it's happened to Anthony Pettis. This is such a rare submission to see in MMA. Honestly, I think I've only ever seen it twice. Back when I used to train regularly, I got tapped by it once. A body triangle, and they just kind of stretch you out and it tweaks your back. And that's a really quick, like, tap, I'm done, stop. Like, it hurts so bad, so quick. And yeah, dude, this happened to him in the third round of his fight with Dustin Poirier a few years back. And this is the second time it's happened to him. So that was really sad to see. He started off the season with a first round submission. He looked great in that fight. Like, man, Pettis just can't catch a break. Congratulations to Stevie Ray, though, on the most biggest win of his career in his 34th fight. It was pretty impressive. And then Matthias Scheffel defeated former PFL champ Bruno Cappelozza in the main event. After losing the first round, he pulled it together and came back with solid boxing in the second and third, picked up the win. All right, so let's move on to Bellator, where my heart was absolutely shattered in the main event. But I wasn't able to watch this, or a lot of these, because I was covering PFL. I had to recap a bunch of fights for them, and the time slots were like the exact same time, so it really sucked. I wish one was during the day and one was at night, like they were, I don't know, a couple months ago. How it worked out like that, but they weren't. They were on at the same time. What I can say about it, though, Cody lost for the first time, which is really surprising to me. He lost to 8-5 opponent Justin Gonzalez by unanimous decision. Again, I don't really know how the fight went because the prelims haven't been uploaded. But yeah, dude, Cody Law has been nothing but dominant, like absolutely dominant. Like, he's a serious talent for the near future. He's 27 years old, and he was 6-0 going into this fight with 5 finishes. And yeah, he ends up taking his first defeat, but I'm sure he'll come back better. He's a really stud athlete. He's a great wrestler. He's still got a bright future. He'll learn from it. Kat Zingano defeated Pam Sorensen, and this was super cool to hear about. Nonetheless, I would love to say super cool to see, but I didn't see it. Kat Zingano, prior to coming to the UFC, was a champ in Ring of Fire, as well as Fight to Win. So she won the flyweight championships and bantamweight championships in both of those organizations prior to coming to Invicta and then the UFC. After back-to-back third-round TKO victories over future champions Miesha Tate, former Strikeforce champion and future UFC champion Miesha Tate, and then Amanda Nunes, you know, most people consider the women's GOAT, improving her record to 9-0. She went into her fight with Ronda Rousey, her title fight, and lost in 14 seconds by an armbar. She then lost to Juliana Pena and Caitlin Vieira, falling from 9-0 to 9-3 before beating Marianne Hanaud. She then lost to Megan Anderson in kind of like a freak accident. Like, Anderson landed a head kick where her toe went into Kat's eye, and, you know, the fight was stopped 61 seconds into the first round. Considering that was a bit of a rough thing to watch. But since leaving the UFC and going to Bellator, she's gone 3-0. She went from 10-4 to 13-4. Like, she's doing really well for herself. And at 39 years old, she'll be 40 in like less than a week on July 1st. It was super cool to see. Like, you gotta love Kat Zingano, man. Like, for everything she's dealt with in her past, like her husband committing suicide, who was also her coach. You know, they were on this journey together. That happened a long time ago. But to see her rebound and, do really well for herself, it makes me super happy to see. Alexander Chablis absolutely dominated Brent Primus, so I heard, and finished him in the second round. I believe he's the first person to ever finish Brent Primus. Yeah, he was. Yeah, I'm assuming he looked really good. Stops him at 122 of the second round. So Chablis is now on a 7-fight win streak. His last defeat came via split decision, and he's 22-3 as a professional, with 2 of those losses by split decision. At 29 years old, I'm very interested to see what he brings in the near future. Achilles Mota defeated Dan Murray in the preliminary main event. A pretty dominant win. It looks like his 30-27s across the board. Brennan Ward had a good performance coming back. And, Brennan Ward took a few years off. He battled, with drug addiction and whatnot. He left the sport in 2017 following back-to-back losses to Paul Daly and Fernando Gonzalez, going 1-3 in his last 4. And he didn't come back until earlier this year. He spent nearly 5 years outside of the octagon battling his personal demons. And since he came back, he's picked up back-to-back second-round knockout victories. So that is super cool to see as well. You know what's better than a true success story about, say, a prodigy? Comeback stories. Comeback stories are fucking awesome. And I was super happy to see that he came back and got another win. Magomed Magomedov versus Enrique Barzola. Man, what a fight this was. Holy fuck. This was such a great fight. And my heart was deeply saddened with this one too, man. Because, man, Enrique Barzola was looking so good. Like, he secured 5 takedowns on Magomed Magomedov in his first 5 attempts. Okay. Now, I believe he didn't take him down again after that. He tried, a handful more times. He might have taken him down one more time. But, dude, it's not very often you see Magomedov get out-wrestled. Raufeon Stots is the only one to have done that to him. And Raufeon Stots is probably the best wrestler Bellator has. Other than maybe like Danny Salvatello or Joey Davis may have something to say about that. But, dude, his wrestling is top fucking notch. And Enrique Barzola was out-wrestling him. And his striking was looking good too. But Magomedov's striking, man, it's so slick. It's so crispy. He throws beautiful spinning attacks. He landed a number of spinning back fists on him, spinning back kicks, good straight punches, good hooks, good round kicks, switch kicks. Like, he's a very, very technical striker. And he was looking good in that. But I had Barzola up 2-1 going into the 4th. And as Barzola is initiating a takedown in the 4th, Magomedov jumps on a guillotine, an arm-in guillotine. I'm like, he's fine. He'll get out of it. And not long after that at all, like literally a couple seconds later, he gets swept, and Magomedov is now mounting him. And I was like, oh, shit, it's probably over. Because, dude, if someone jumps guard for a guillotine and they're able to sweep their opponent and mount them, that means the choke is really tight. And I was like, no. And yep, he got the tap at 127 of the 4th round. Super impressive performance by both men. But, dude, Magomedov is now the only man to ever finish Enrique Barzola. That's a huge feather in his cap. Barzola isn't the best fighter in the entire world, but he's a very good fighter with great cardio. He's very well-rounded. He was a pretty solid talent in the UFC. He had 10 fights in the UFC. 8 of them were at featherweight, but he is the 3rd all-time leader for takedowns in the featherweight division. Dennis Bermudez and Darren Elkins are the only 2 that have more takedowns in the featherweight division than Enrique Barzola, which is just fucking remarkable because, dude, the featherweight division has had guys like Frankie Edgar. It's had guys like Chad Mendez. And, yeah, he had more takedowns in just 8 outings than either of them. So, good win for Magomedov. He's now 18-2 as a pro. Sad for Barzola, but he'll be back. He'll be back. Danny Salvatello looked really good too after he started off with his striking. I didn't think that he was going to stay on the feet as much as he did early on anyway, but it set up his beautiful takedowns. He's such a great chain wrestler. He's so strong. And his top pressure, once he gets guys down, they don't usually get back up. And that was the story of this fight. In the second round, Leandro Higo was able to reverse him and end up taking his back and rain down some nasty elbows, searching for the choke the whole time. So it was 1-1 going into the 3rd. And following that, Salvatello repeated the first round in the third, fourth, and fifth and got another win. Leandro Higo came into this fight with a record of 21-5, and his last loss was to Aaron Pico. Okay, since then, he'd won his last 3 straight. So this is a very, very good win for Danny. He's now 13-1 as a pro and 3-0 in Bellator with wins over Brett Johns, Jornel Lugo, and Leandro Higo. So I'm super excited to see what's coming next from him too. And then in the main event, man, Johnny Eblen versus Gegard Mousasi. Man, this made me so sad. Like, I love Gegard. He's one of my favorite fighters. He's one of the best to ever do it. Like, he really is. The only critique you could have of Gegard is that he doesn't always show up. And as he put it before, sometimes he sleeps. Sometimes he's just not awake while he's in there. I don't know. It could be one of 3 things. It could be that. It could be that he's getting a little older because his timing, and honestly, he wasn't winning the striking exchanges either. And Eblen's wrestling had a lot to do with that. But Eblen's boxing looked better than Gegard's, and that's not something I expected. Like, Gegard went 8-0 as a pro kickboxer and 12-1 as an amateur boxer, won titles in both. 28 of his 49 wins are by knockout, 12 submissions. Like, he's a straight up finisher. He's one of the more dangerous fighters to ever do it. Came into this fight with a record of 49-7-2. 3 of the last 4 guys to have defeated him, Jacare Souza, Lyoto Machida, and Uriah Hall, he defeated all of them. So 3 of the last 4 guys to beat him, he holds wins over. Like, he does so well in rematches. Now, he lost the rematch to Gegard. He beat him the first time. Nonetheless, like I said, he has wins over 3 of the last 4 guys to beat him. And the only other guy that beat him that he didn't get a win over, the last guy prior to this, was Rafael Lovato Jr., who was forced into retirement immediately following this fight. So this was his 2nd time in a row fighting an elite wrestler that came in with an 11-0 record. Last one was Austin Vanderford, who he dusted off in like 85 seconds. So I didn't know if that was going to happen again. I figured this was going to be a bit tougher of a fight. And honestly, I was upset that Anatoly Tokov didn't get this shot. Oh, by the way, Anatoly Tokov got a first-round knockout on the prelims. He's now 31-2 as a pro. So Johnny Eblen, man, he won all 5 rounds of this fight. He was able to out-wrestle Gegard in the 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th, and he was able to out-strike him in the 3rd. Like, this was such an impressive performance by him. I don't know what this sets up next. Does this set up an immediate rematch for Gegard, or does Eblen defend against Tokov? Honestly, I think it should have been Tokov fighting for the belt. I think he should have been fighting Gegard Mousasi. I can't believe he got passed up again. Like, I know he fought in the middle of the prelims on this card, but it's like, come on, man. Like, give him his fucking title shot. He's due for it. His last loss was a title fight in M1 Global by majority decision to Ramazan Amib, someone who's doing very well in the UFC right now. He just got finished by Jack Della Maddalena, but he's doing very well in the UFC right now. That's his last loss, dude. Like, give him the title shot. But yeah, I hope Gegard gets the immediate rematch. But honestly, dude, he was talking about going down to 170 like maybe a year ago, and I was like, I don't think so. He's pretty big. Like, he's fought at heavyweight. He's won at heavyweight. He's won titles at light heavyweight, a number of them. He won a number of titles at middleweight. But, dude, he looked a bit smaller than Eblen in this fight. So I wouldn't mind seeing him go to 170. I also wouldn't mind seeing an immediate rematch. And I wouldn't mind seeing Eblen fight Tokov either. I'd love to see Gegard get this back, though. I don't know if he would win the rematch. It's kind of hard to make a compelling argument that he would, having lost all 5. Like, dude, he got absolutely mauled on Friday. But yeah, man, congratulations to Johnny Eblen. Like, that was a seriously, seriously high-level performance. He's the new Bellator middleweight champion, and at 30 years old, things are looking really, really bright for him. All right, now let's get into the UFC, which happened just last night. Started off the card with a controversial decision between Vanessa Demopoulos and Jin Fry. Most people think Fry won the fight. What are you going to do? Mario Bautista had an incredible performance against Brian Kelleher. Okay, so Brian Kelleher is one of the more durable talents in the sport, I believe. He's very well-rounded, and his record is less than great, okay? He was 24-13 coming into this fight, but he's beaten a number of good fighters. Like, he's really good. He's got great striking. He's good at switching stances while he's striking. He's got good wrestling offense, good wrestling defense. His jiu-jitsu is decent. Like, he submitted Yuri Alcantara in his UFC debut. dude, Yuri Alcantara is an elite level black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He also submitted Julio Arce in his fight prior to coming to the UFC, where he defended his Ring of Combat bantamweight title. Okay, he's the only guy to ever submit Julio Arce. Like, he's got good grappling. And he did lose his last fight by submission, but that was to Umar Nurmagomedov. I think a lot of people expected that. Mario Bautista, man, he came out and just took it right to him, took his back and got the choke at 227 of the first round. He's now on a 2-fight win streak and, you know, just picked up the biggest win of his career. He's now 10-2 as a pro. And at 28 years old, he's turning 29 also on July 1st. Yeah, the future looks pretty bright for him too, man. I think I'd like to see Mario Bautista fight Jonathan Martinez. I think that would be a really fitting matchup. Cody Durden ran right through JP Buys in 68 seconds. And this was sad to see, man, because JP Buys made his UFC debut alongside his girlfriend, now ex-girlfriend, Cheyenne Buys, or Cheyenne Blissmas, as she, you know, has gone back to her maiden name. And they both lost their fights in their UFC debuts, okay? So you make your UFC debuts together and you lose together. It's kind of a beautiful story. It's just a little bit of sad of the story, but it gets so much sadder. Okay, so after that, Cheyenne started cheating on him and left him. So it's so sad. Buys, they've both kept their contracts in the UFC following that. After losing their UFC debuts together, they've each fought twice. Cheyenne has won both of her fights, picking up a performance of the night in one of them. And since then, JP has lost both of his fights, losing his last 3 straight, 2 of them by knockout. Like, man, it just appears things can't get much worse for this poor guy. I feel so bad for him. I really wanted him to win this fight and do well, but it's a good win for Cody Durden, man. Like, he really did run right through him. He's now 13-4-1 as a pro. JP is now 9-5, and I think you can probably expect his pink slip in the coming weeks. Sergey Morozov had a good fight against Raulian Paiva, a nice back and forth encounter to rebound from his defeat to Douglas Silva de Andrade back in February. Becky had a really, really good fight against TJ Brown. I'm honestly surprised this didn't get fight of the night. Now, the main event got fight of the night, and that was a really great fight too. So, I mean, it makes sense. But man, did these two go to war. Like, holy shit, man. TJ Brown, I've seen him fight a number of times before. He's not great, but he is a good fighter. And, man, dude, I just can't express enough. Oh, these two went to war. It was a straight up back and forth fight. They both hurt each other. They both looked really good in the grappling. They both almost secured triangle chokes against each other. It was a really good back and forth fight. Shylin is now 2-1 in the UFC, 39-10 as a pro. So at 28 years old to have 49 fights and have won 39 of them, like, that's impressive, man. 49 MMA fights. He's not even 30 years old. Crazy. Carlos Olberg versus Stephan Enrique, man, this made me sad. No, I'm not upset that Carlos Olberg won because, you know, I didn't really have a favorite going into this fight, but they're both former kickboxers. They're both former kickboxing champions. Stephan Enrique went 13-1 in kickboxing, and Olberg went 19-2 in kickboxing. Now, coming into this fight, Olberg was just 4-1 as a professional mixed martial artist, and Stephan was 6-2. So they're both like right at the beginning of their MMA careers. And man, this fight did not, I mean, it lived up to the hype, that's for sure, but I just wanted to see more. You know, it went 115 into the first round, you know, a mere 75 seconds. And Olberg catches Enrique with a nasty hook and ends up hurting him and gets the finish. That was made me sad to see because that's Stephan's second loss in a row. It's a second knockout loss in a row. His fight prior, he lost to Ozmat Mirzakhanov in a fight that he was looking very good in. He won the first 2 rounds of that fight, and he ends up getting flying kneed 44 seconds into the 3rd round. I was so sad to see that because I really wanted him to win, and he was looking so good. And then he comes out and gets dusted in this one. So I think it might have been a little early for him to come back. After a vicious knockout like that, to come back a mere 3 months later, 3.5 months later. That fight was on March 12th. This next fight against Olberg happened on June 25th. That's 3.5 months. After getting brutally starched like that, it was just too early to come back. And yeah, he needed a little more time to recover his brain. sad to see, but it was a really good win for Olberg, man. A really good win for Olberg. Chris Curtis started off the main card against Rodolfo Vieira, and man, this wasn't the fight I thought it was going to be at all. I thought for sure this was going to end in a finish. I thought Vieira was either going to take him down and submit him pretty handily, or Curtis was going to knock him out pretty handily. But he didn't. This fight honestly kind of sucked. It wasn't very entertaining. After losing the first round, Curtis was able to rebound and make the adjustment toward the end of the first round with some shovel hooks, and he landed a lot of really nasty shovel hooks. And you know, something to be said about Vieira. His career evolution is really impressing me, because to be literally the most decorated jiu-jitsu fighter in all of MMA, or at least in the UFC, he's the most decorated jiu-jitsu fighter in the UFC. He's a 5-time world champion gold medalist in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's a 2-time world champion silver medalist. He's a 7-time World Cup gold medalist, 2-time World Cup silver medalist, 2-time Pan American Championships gold medalist, 2-time European Championships gold medalist, an ADCC Submission Wrestling World Championships gold medalist. He is the most decorated jiu-jitsu fighter in the sport, literally. And his striking has really come a long way. And honestly, his cardio has too. Like when he got submitted by Anthony Hernandez, like one of the biggest upsets ever, especially with the way that it ended, no one expected that. But that happened because he came out wrestle heavy in the first round and just blew his wad. And in the second round, he was exhausted, got tapped. Well, he came back to beat Dustin Stoltzfus in July of last year, almost a year ago, 11 months ago. And he ended up getting a 3rd round submission victory over him. So we saw improvements with his cardio. And then this one, he went toe-to-toe with Chris Curtis. Though he kept shooting on takedowns he wasn't getting, his striking looked pretty good, man. Like much better than I predicted it would. Yeah, he's been putting in the work, man. Umar Nurmagomedov had a very, very dominant performance over Nate Maness. Got 30-27, 30-26, and 30-25 scorecards. Now, Nurmagomedov is more of a striker than he is a grappler. Josh Thompson was saying this on the Weighing In podcast like last week leading up to this fight. He was like, dude, when he came over with the other guys like Islam and Habib, you know, he came over a little bit later, but they brought him over to AKA. And he was like, when he came over to AKA, he didn't really have that great of a ground game. Like he wasn't bad there, but he was not a grappler by any means. He was a striker, you know, and to have pretty much as dominant of a ground game as Islam does, as Habib does, that's unrealistically impressive, man. He's now 15-0 as a pro at 26 years old. He turned 26 in January, so it's going to be a while before he's even 27. He's now 15-0 as a pro, man. And 3-0 in the UFC, 2-time FMMAS bantamweight champion, 2-time GFC bantamweight champion prior to coming over. And yeah, the future is looking brighter for him every single time he fights. Umar Nurmagomedov is the real deal, man. Thiago Moises picked up a really much needed win over Christos Giagos. He ends up taking his back in a standing position, gets the body triangle, and gets the choke at 3:05 of the first round. It was really impressive because he came into this fight with a record of 15-6. He was coming off back-to-back losses, the only 2 times he had ever been finished. Islam Makhachev submitted him in the 4th round, which was really impressive because Moises is an elite-level black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then he got stopped by Yoel Alvarez and then comes into this fight and runs right through Giagos. And Giagos isn't the best fighter, you know, but he is a good fighter. And, yeah, that was super good to see Moises rebound. Josh Parisian versus Alan Bodot. Man, this was a good fight. This was a really good fight. Bodot came out looking great. Like he hurt Parisian pretty bad in that first round and followed up with a lot of ground strikes. Now he has 8 wins, 7 of them are knockouts. It looked like he was about to pick up his 9th win and 8th knockout, but Parisian is able to weather the storm and ends up taking Bodot down at the end of the first round. Well, the second round shows more of the same, and they're both pretty exhausted at this point, but Parisian is able to work up enough energy to get the stoppage. Bodot is now 0-3 with a no contest in the UFC, and that no contest was originally a TKO loss. So pretty much 0-4 in the UFC with 3 TKO losses. It sucks because he's a good fighter. I want to see him continue fighting, but I think he's probably going to get his pink slip following this fight. Josh Parisian, he had so much hype on him coming over to the UFC, and he's hiccuped a couple times. He lost his promotional debut to Parker Porter. He got knocked out by Dante Almaze in his last fight in the third round, which was really surprising. I didn't expect that at all. I really thought he was going to run right through Mays, but he didn't. He lost. And yeah, he rebounds and comes back with a impressive second round TKO performance. A really gutty performance by him. It was good to see. Shavkat Rakhmonov, what can't you say about this guy that isn't just incredible? Neil Magny. All right. Neil Magny's pretty incredible too, because I'll say, man, he has had one of the toughest schedules of any fighter in the sport, especially for a fighter that never won the belt. He's literally had one of the toughest schedules in the entire sport. Okay, let's look at some guys that he's fought. Sergio Moraes, who isn't great, but he was pretty good in his day. Tim Means, Damian Maia, Eric Silva, Kelvin Gastelum, Hector Lombard, Lorenz Larkin, Johnny Hendricks, Rafael Dos Anjos. There's 3-4 former world champions right there. Carlos Condit, another former world champion. Santiago Ponzinibbio, Li Jingling, Anthony Martin, Robbie Lawler, Mike Chiesa, Jeff Neal, Max Griffin, Shavkat Rakhmonov. Like, dude, there's like more than 5 world champions in there, and he beat a number of them. Robbie Lawler, Carlos Condit, Johnny Hendricks, Hector Lombard. He beat all of them. So, I mean, he lost to Dos Anjos, but that's it. Actually, Dos Anjos is the only world champion he ever fought that he didn't beat. That's incredibly impressive. Coming into this fight on a 2-fight win streak, 5-1 in his last 6. And he opens up the fight with a nice front kick, but Rakhmonov catches it and puts him on his back. No, he's throwing up some really nasty up kicks that look like it's going to be pretty fucking dangerous for Rakhmonov to pursue him on the ground, but he's able to, not get hit too cleanly by any of them and remain on top for the rest of the first round. Well, he does more of the same in the second, and then he falls back for a guillotine, an arm-in guillotine, which honestly I didn't think he had, because I don't know, the angle wasn't perfect. Arm-in guillotines are a little harder to secure than, guillotines without an arm-in. But dude, with 2 seconds left in the second round, he submits Neil Magny. And submitting Neil Magny is a serious feat, man. Neil Magny is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he submitted actually he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'm sorry, but he has a very good ground game. And yeah, man, Shavkat Rakhmonov, he is the unhyped version of Khamzat Chimaev. Okay, they fight very differently, but I don't know, maybe not really, because they both have really good grappling, they both have really good wrestling, they both have really good striking, they're both technicians. Khamzat showed that he's not a technician, he didn't fight very technically in his last fight, but he went into that fight with Gilbert Burns with a terrible game plan and still came out the victor. That was impressive as fuck. Now, Shavkat Rakhmonov, man, these are two, probably the number 1 and number 2 undefeated talents in the sport right now, other than maybe like Yaroslav Amazov, Bellator welterweight champion. He's 26-0. But dude, Shavkat Rakhmonov is now 16-0 with 16 finishes. 8 submissions and 8 knockouts. Does that not spell prodigy? Does that not spell well-rounded as fuck? He is a former KZ MMAF welterweight champion. He won that belt and defended it. He did the same with the M1 Challenge welterweight championship, won it and defended it prior to coming over to the UFC. 4 title fights prior to coming to the UFC, 4 in a row. Won all of them, obviously, by finish. And now he's 4-0 in the UFC. Like, man, forget the sky. There is no limit to this dude's potential. He's a master of sports in Sambo and combat Sambo. He's a master of sports in MMA. And he's still only 27 years old. He'll be 28 in October. Like, this dude is a future champion. He's not just fighting for the belt in the future. He's winning the belt in the future. I really want to see him fight Khamzat Chimaev so bad, man. So bad. And then in the main event, Matthias Gamrot and Arman Tsarukyan. Now, I did a preview to this the day of the fight, like an idiot. I really wish I could have done it a little sooner and got a few more views on it. But I pretty much broke this fight down only. And, dude, what a high-level fight. What a high-level main event. Now, a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but a number of people were complaining that the UFC made this a main event because they didn't know who either guy was. And it's like, well, that's kind of your fault if you don't know who they are. Arman Tsarukyan's fought 6 times in the UFC. Gamrot has fought 4 times in the UFC. Like, you should have seen each of them fight at least a couple times. Tsarukyan was 18-2 as a professional coming into this fight. He lost his second pro fight. And other than that, he won 12 straight en route to a shot at the UFC. He was a champion prior to coming over to the UFC as well. He won a belt and defended it, the FEMFP lightweight championship, and came to the UFC with a 13-1 record to face Islam Makhachev. While Makhachev wasn't a top 5 guy at that point, we all knew how good he was, and we all had a feeling he's the future of the division at that point. And dude, Tsarukyan, I wouldn't say he really put it on Islam, but he did very well in that fight, especially considering it was his UFC debut. Okay. Islam was very established in the division at that point. He took Islam down, and he even won a round against him, okay, in his UFC debut. That showed us, and he was only 23, 24 years old at that point too. That showed us, man, we got a real prodigy on our hands. Following that, he won 5 straight fights. Now, he became a bit of a decision machine in his next few. Beat Olivier Aubin-Mercier, who is 4-0 in the PFL since leaving the UFC. Davey Hallmosh, a multiple-time world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Matt Frevola, who he almost submitted. He almost got some anaconda chokes against him, but he wasn't able to. Sorry, Frevola is an absolute tank of a man. So there's really no shame there. He still dominated and won all 3 rounds handily. Following this, he got back-to-back knockout wins over Christos Giagos and Joel Alvarez. Alvarez was 19-2 as a pro going into that fight, while Tsarukyan was 17-2. All 19 of Alvarez's wins came via finish, 16 of them via submission. Tsarukyan went at him mostly with his grappling and took him, well, wrestling, I'd say. He took him down and beat the living fuck out of him. That was one of the bloodiest fights of the year so far. Such an impressive performance. And then, you know, he's 18-2 going into this fight with Gamrot, who was 20-1, and he was 20-1 with a no contest. His no contest, he avenged. He fought Norman Park the first time, beat him. Second time, had a no contest, and then they had a trilogy where he beat him again. Gamrot, like Tsarukyan, was a champion prior to coming over to the UFC. He's a KSW champ. He won the lightweight belt, defended it 3 times. Then he won the featherweight belt, and then he defended his lightweight belt once more prior to coming over to the UFC with a record of 17-0. Now, whenever someone comes over to the UFC with a record like that, we got to wonder if it's a little bit padded. But considering he fought guys like Norman Park and Kleber Kjoik-Erbs, who was 24-4-1 going into that fight, he is also a champion. He's now 30-5-1. He has gone 6-0 with 6 finishes since losing to Gamrot. Like, he fought some pretty good fighters outside the UFC. Made his UFC debut against Guram Kutataladze, who had a really, really epic war with Damir Ismagulov last weekend. He lost that fight by a split decision. It was very close, could have went either way. But Gamrot lost this fight by a split decision, and a fight pretty much everyone thought he won. Okay, he secured 5 takedowns against Kutataladze, who didn't take him down once. And he outstruck him 69-43 in total strikes and 52-37 in significant strikes. Like, he won that fight. He very easily could have been 21-0 coming into this fight and not 20-1. Nonetheless, following that, he secured 3 straight finishes, like violent, brutal finishes over Scott Holtzman, who he viciously KO'd, Jeremy Stevens, who nearly ripped his arm clean off with the Kimura 65 seconds into the first round. Even though Jeremy Stevens ain't what he used to be, that's impressive as fuck. No one does that to him. And then he knocked out Carlos Diego Ferreira going into this fight. And now he's 21-1, man. So what I hear a lot of people saying is that Tsarukyan got robbed in this fight, or at least that they thought he won. No, you really can't bitch about it, man, because Tsarukyan clearly won the first and second, and then I thought Gamrot won the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. There's one of those rounds you could have given to Tsarukyan, though. I could see the argument for Tsarukyan winning for sure. They both looked so good. But I thought it could, handily be 48-47 either way. All 3 judges had it for Gamrot 48-47. I'm not complaining about the scorecards. I think they're justified. But dude, think about it. Arman Tsarukyan, he's not going to let this stop him. He's still only 25 years old. Okay. He's turning 26 in October. He's still a very young man. He's a master of sport in MMA, a master of sport in freestyle wrestling. Like, he'll be back. He's still probably a future champion. And Gamrot, a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they can strike really well and can wrestle his fucking ass off. Man, He's 31. He'll be turning 32 in December, but it looks like he's right in the middle of his prime. And over the next year, I think I see both of these guys being in the top 5, and I see both of them challenging for the belt, maybe even winning it. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see either of them become champion. They're both so talented. Like, this was such a high-level main event, and I'm so glad the UFC gave it to us, because while Gamrot had gone 5 rounds before in his title fights, Tsarukyan hadn't. He'd never been 5 rounds before. And his cardio appeared to hold up. Like, he's got really good endurance. But Gamrot, though he wasn't able to secure takedowns early on, Tsarukyan even took him down in the first round after Gamrot tried to take him down. But as the fight went on, Gamrot was able to make the adjustments and secure the takedowns and get a lot of control time. So I can see why he was the victor. But yeah, man, I'm very pleased with how this fight went. It was an absolutely wicked performance by both of them. And honestly, I can't wait to see what's next for either of them. Like, I don't think either of them lost in this fight. They're both winners, man. But yeah, what did you guys think of the fights? There's 3 really good events, plus Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship happened on Friday too. Like, there's a lot of combat sports over the weekend. So now we gear up for UFC 276 going down this next Saturday, and PFL 6, which goes down this coming Friday. So be looking out for those videos. I appreciate y'all for watching. Like and subscribe to my channel. I truly appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good one. Hey! 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 I was down, but now I'm up. Being rich really got me bugged. 100K knows not enough. My bad man fall in love. Load up on God. Let's have some fun. Hello, 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 hello. With the lights out, it's so dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us. I'm so stupid, it gets dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us. I'm a lot and I'm burning up. Let's speed up, my libido. Hey, I'm building a legacy, filling with shit I could stack on the shelf. I hope that I make it past 27 without killing myself.